Now this is Cloud 9, the iconic A-frame tube located on Siargao Island in the Philippines. Today, the wave is renowned for its hollow, powerful right-handers, and it's a reef break that attracts surfers from all over the globe. However, what many people don't know is that Cloud 9 and Siargao in general has had an extremely turbulent history. From its wild discovery to its rapid growth as a surf travel destination and its near total destruction. This video is the story of the Philippines' most iconic surf break. Like much of coastal Philippines, back in the 80s, Siargao was a largely unexplored and untouched slice of Filipino coastline. While local fishermen knew the coast intimately, there was little outside influence, and any waves that were explored were well-kept secrets for years. And to be honest, there are conflicting stories as to how Cloud 9 was actually discovered, when a group of American professional surfers and photographers went to the Philippines to look for waves. Now, the guys embarked on an exploratory surf expedition through the Philippines, and while they were on Siargao, they stumbled upon a perfect wave. Now, the wave they found was a hollow, pristine right-hand tube, and the wave was given the name Cloud 9 after the local chocolate bar, which had become the staple diet for the guys on that particular surf trip. However, there is another story and a figure who has become synonymous with the surf break Cloud 9, and a man who is often credited with finding the break back in the 80s. Mike Boyum was a pretty out there, intrepid surf explorer, a legendary figure, famous for his alternative lifestyle and for pioneering several world-class surf breaks around the world, including G-Land. But Boyum's life wasn't just this glamorous one of venturing to all these amazing surf destinations. He also had a darker side. And after being banned from Indonesia and fleeing the Maui Mafia for drug-related issues, Boyum eventually posted up in the Philippines on a remote corner of Siargao looking for his slice of perfection. Now, Mike spent his whole life evading the law, running away from people, finding new waves, but eventually in the Philippines his life of adventure and being constantly on the run would catch up with him. When during a 40-day fast he passed away in a small jungle hut close to the wave at Cloud 9. Before that, the break at Cloud 9 wasn't even called Cloud 9, it had a different name called Jacking Horse, the name given to the wave by local fishermen who were describing the abrupt nature in which the waves at that particular part of reef curled over and broke. For a few years, the place remained untouched by commercialism, and it remained a far cry from the island of today. And for a while, it was a place only explored by the hardiest of surf explorers. Through the 90s, word spread of this amazing wave in the Philippines, and more surfers flocked to the island. Now, as you'd expect, as this influx of surf tourists came to the island of Siargao, it was met with concern by some local fishermen and local villagers about the potentially negative impacts of mass surf tourism. Nevertheless, more surfers kept coming, and the island grew and grew. During this time, the first Siargao Cup was held, marking the beginning of a new era for Siargao. Through the 90s and the early 2000s, Siargao's reputation soared, and before you knew it, you had restaurants, cafes, homestays, all sorts of surf camps and surf schools springing up around the island, and it was Cloud 9 that served as the centerpiece of a newfound surfing paradise. Additionally, Siargao's affordability and relaxed lifestyle attracted not just surfers, but also backpackers and later on remote workers. Then both local and national governments began to promote and market the place as the capital of surfing in the Philippines, further boosting the development of infrastructure. Then later into the 2000s and into the 2010s, social media, the internet became a thing, and yeah, it just boomed from there. As more visitors arrived, rapid development followed. Resorts, hostels, cafes, and surf schools began to emerge, transforming Siargao from a relaxed jungle village into a bustling surf destination. General Luna in particular became the main travel surf hub, and it offered a mix of everything from accommodations and nightlife to cafes and surf schools, appealing to both surfers and non-surfers alike. While you could argue that, a surf town boom such as this is a real negative thing because you've got way more crowds, I guess that's all good from like a selfish surfing perspective, but If you're a local business or local who depends on travel and tourism for their livelihood, then obviously it is a good thing. So for a couple of decades, Siargao began to just grow and grow. And that brings us until the early 2020s. And this was where Siargao was smashed by two major black swan events that almost wiped the island out altogether. The first was the pandemic, and the COVID-19 pandemic had a devastating impact on Siargao. As lockdowns and travel restrictions were imposed throughout early 2020, the island, which obviously relied heavily on international tourism, saw a sudden halt in tourism. Surf contests, including the annual Siargao Cup, was cancelled, and businesses such as accommodation, surf schools, resorts, restaurants had to close their doors. Many locals who depended on tourism were forced to find alternative ways to make a living, resorting back to old school ways of life such as fishing and farming. With no clear timeline for recovery, the once thriving surf town had turned into a ghost town. Despite this, the pandemic also brought some positive changes. With fewer visitors, Siargao's natural environment began to recover, with clearer waters and healthier marine life observed in the area. That's not to mention the less crowded lineups. If you were there during this time, please let me know what it was like. Were you allowed to stay in the Philippines as a foreigner? Did it get really uncrowded? Was it amazing, or did you have to leave? Please let me know what it was like. Eventually, by late 2021 and early 2022, Siargao began to experience a resurgence as international borders were reopened and surfers began to trickle back to the island. But then, in 2021, after Siargao had began its recovery from the pandemic, Super Typhoon Odette made landfall in Siargao as a Category 5 storm, bringing with it winds up to 260 kilometers an hour and storm surges that ransacked the island. The typhoon was one of the strongest ever to hit the Philippines, and it tore through Siargao's coastline, flattening homes and destroying buildings within hours. The destruction was near total, and over 90% of the structures on the island were either severely damaged or totally destroyed. Roofs were ripped off buildings, trees were uprooted, and electricity was cut off, leaving Siargao completely isolated in the immediate aftermath. Financial losses were staggering, and initial estimates placed the total damage in Siargao alone at around 20 billion in local currency, which is approximately 400 million in USD. Many resorts, surf schools and accommodations were built with lightweight materials suitable for tropical environments and were basically reduced to rubble in general Luna. The airport was also heavily damaged, which further delayed relief efforts and prolonged the island's isolation. In the days following the typhoon, Siargao faced a humanitarian crisis. Food and clean water became scarce, medical facilities were overwhelmed, and with no electricity or communications infrastructure, many residents were unable to call loved ones or ask for help. Because of the extensive damage, relief operations were slow to get started, forcing locals and stranded tourists to rely on community-led initiatives for support and survival. Makeshift shelters were built from salvaged materials, while donations of food and water were distributed by volunteers and small organisations, while some residents had to travel by boat to neighbouring islands just to access basic supplies. So despite the overwhelming devastation from Typhoon Odette, both the local and international surfing community rallied together to help Siargao, organising fundraising campaigns to rebuild homes and businesses. Government aid eventually arrived, while NGOs and private donors helped restore critical infrastructure. Efforts were also made to restore Siargao's most iconic tourism attractions, which included the tower and famous boardwalk directly in front of Cloud 9. But many businesses took the disaster as an opportunity to rebuild things with stronger materials and a renewed focus on more sustainable designs using typhoon-resistant materials and eco-friendly practices. By late 2022, Siargao had made significant strides in its recovery, and surf resorts, accommodations and restaurants began to gradually reopen. However, the scars of Odette remained, and the disaster served as a harsh reminder of the climate vulnerability in island communities. Here in 2025, Siargao has almost totally been rebuilt, with a renewed focus on creating a more sustainable and resilient future for the island, this time using stronger and more resilient materials to withstand the forces of nature. Local businesses, surf camps and resorts have reopened, but again, many of them are prioritising more eco-friendly initiatives, such as renewable energy and community-based tourism, to ensure the island doesn't get overrun like before. Cloud9, as always, remains a world-class surf spot. Its perfect hollow tubes still drawing surfers from around the globe. The story of Cloud9, with all its triumphs and all its setbacks, continues to unfold, and Cloud9 and Siargao remain one of the most coveted surf destinations in the world.